Hey everyone, today on the channel, I'm going to be working on the Kraton 4S. Going to be rebuilding the whole transmission because I had a bearing go out on me, which wiped out the gears, messed up the case. So I got all the new parts in, so we'll get it to the bench, get this thing rebuilt. Alright guys, let's get going on this. Now I like to start off by usually laying out all of my parts onto the bench. Make sure I got everything. Lucky enough to have this parts diagram, so I'll keep that right out in front of me. So putting this slipper clutch together, seems like, everything has to bolt on to this new spur gear. And there are two different sides to the spur gear. I'll try to show you. So one side has this small recessed area, and the other side has this flanged out area. So pretty obvious how things go, and they'll kind of only fit one way. But just wanted to make sure to point that out. So we'll get going. We have one of these flanged bearings that goes into the spur gear. And again, I think it only goes one way. Nope, it'll actually fit in either way. But I believe the correct way is to put it so the flange fits into that recessed area. Then we'll start with our slipper pads. So again, on this side where the flange is on the bearing, get the slipper pad right against the gear. I'm just taking a minute to make sure it's a tight fit. So you just make sure it's all pressed in all the way. Then we got to take our washer. That goes on. Then one more slipper pad. So that washer is kind of sandwiched in between the slipper pads. Flip it over, and I'm kind of holding that in, even though it shouldn't fall out. But on the other side, gets a pad pressed right in, and I'm just working it in, making sure it's flat in there against the pad. And then get the second one. Again, just taking the time to get everything pressed in, make sure it's fitting right. And it looks like this side, once the pads are in, it pretty much sits flush with the surface of the spur gear. Same thing with the other side. It sits flush. Okay, so now on these plate sets, there are two different sides. One side has this squared off section that fits into that washer that we just installed between the two pads. So that should fit in there, sit flat against the slipper disc. Just going to take a look at my diagram, make sure I'm not missing anything. So that fits in there, shows that. The other side has the two pads. So we'll put the other piece on. Oop. Again, going to make sure you kind of hold everything together so it doesn't want to fall apart on you. Okay, that's back in. Make sure I hold it this time. The other side goes right into place. So it sits flush down against the slipper pads. Again, just take the time. Make sure everything's where it should be. Okay, let's see if we can set that down for a minute. Now, I didn't open this bag yet. because this is the bag that contains the little thrust washer. They're very small pieces, so I wanted to make sure I didn't lose them. So let's get this opened up. I'm going to put it right onto the bench. Get rid of that. So now it's a little hard to see. I'll grab this diagram. But now we're going to install this bolt setup. So we have the bolt, that thrust washer setup, the tensioning spring, and that all goes into the middle of the slipper clutch. I'll try to show in some detail here. All right. So that piece with like the tiny little bearings goes into the middle of these two washer pieces. Let me try to give you a close-up. Keep hitting the camera. But those washer pieces have little grooves cut into them that bearing sits into. So once that's assembled, again, good habit, I make sure I hold everything over the bench, because once it hits my floor, it disappears forever. So that should be the setup there. Try to focus on this. There we go. So I have the thrust washer set up. Then I have the brand new tensioning spring. And I'll show you the packaging and all the part numbers at the end of the video. So now I'll take 2mm. I'll kind of hold this together. Now the screw goes in from the side. You can see there's two different sides here. Goes in from this longer side where the slot is cut out of. So we'll get that started. It's going to be hard to show on camera, but I'll just get this started and snugged up. Guys, gonna back up a little bit here. I actually forgot to put in a piece. There's a little plastic piece that goes into this, and you're supposed to screw into it, and I guess it kind of acts like a small like lock washer. Just help it so your screw doesn't back out. I already tried screwing this in once, and you kind of need something to hold it. So I'm probably doing this all. There's got to be an easier way to do this, but I'm just using another wrench just to hold it in place when I start screwing into it. Alright, I think I found a little easier way, which is to actually use this coupling. That plastic piece is inside there. Slide the coupling in. I'm going to put it right down on the bench to hold everything. Now I'll start tightening the screw. Alright, now I'm going to try to get the tension set correctly on this clutch. And right here in the book, it says factory default setting is a half turn loose from fully tight. So I guess it depends what your fully tight means. Now, there's definitely some tension on this, but it doesn't feel bottomed out. Like it's still cranking the spring down. Okay, right there. Seems like the spring is fully compressed, like it doesn't want to turn anymore. And I don't want to keep cranking it to break anything. So I'll just use the label on my wrench and the slots in there. And we'll just go half turn, loosen. So the label lines up with the slot in the other side, 180 degrees out from tight. So that should be it. New slipper clutch is all together. Alright guys, now we got the slipper clutch all put back together. Figured just kind of finish up this part on camera. So bearing that goes on each side, and I put new bearings on. On this long side, we have this black cup. Then this aluminum piece should slide in. And that all gets reinstalled back into the transmission case. Alright guys, wanted to show you the packaging and part numbers for all the parts that I used. So I used all Arma parts that I ordered from Horizon Hobbies website. So just wanted to show, these are the slipper pads. The clutch maintenance set, which include the screw and bearings and spring and everything that you need. That flanged ball bearing. And then the new slipper plate and hub set, which you might not need to order all of this, you know, when you have to do maintenance or fix something in your truck. But my truck, a bearing had come apart, so ruined the casing, it ruined the spur gear, pretty much all the stuff inside of it. So I decided just to replace it all and start new, so I didn't have any problems. And also my son has a 4S Outcast, and we're putting his together and actually broke one of these because I think it got over tightened. Alright guys, hopefully you made it to the end of the video. Went pretty well today rebuilding this. First time pulling one of these completely apart and rebuilding it after it broke. But now I got the transmission back together. I'll get it back to the truck. Hopefully take it out for a run. This thing blows apart, I'll let you guys know. But should be all good to go. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed today's video.